says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a police! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell-Gillard!
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as Forty20. Joining me for another episode in which we'll look at the NRL and Parramatta news are my good mates, Sixties and Clint. Fellas, been a bit of a long layoff with this almost exaggerated and comically long sort of bye week going into a public holiday game. But we're getting there, back end of the week, and we've got the podcast going. How are you guys doing?
Well, mate, I'm going to be stunned if we can get through this podcast in under 2 hours. If we come in under 2 hours, I'm going to be ecstatic.
I'm going to start cracking the whip.
If we can come in under 90 minutes, even more ecstatic. If we come in under an hour, I'll be stunned. But we are actually going to aim to, stick to what we need to stick to tonight. Not too much rambling. So you've got my commitment. Not that I'm ever able to keep the commitment about not talking too much. I am guilty of that. So, and look, apart from that, I'm going to say I'm in a mixed mood tonight, to be honest, fellas. We had a great evening last night at the Junior Reps presentation night. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a moment. But, of course, we've had a week which hasn't exactly been a highlight for the Parramatta Eels. And, again, we'll also talk about that. Clint, how you doing?
Gents, I'm just itching for Monday to come around and let's get into the game. I'm jumping at the bit to run out there with the boys, such as been this week. Let's move past that and get ready to play some first grade rugby league.
Yeah, and before we do talk about the week that was and the week it is coming with the NRL news and Parramatta news, quick shout out to the sponsors of the Tip Sheet, Big Swing Golf, Northmead, and Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narelle, and Parramatta. As you guys know, helps make the podcast happen each and every episode. But now, 60s, I'm going to hand over the reins to you if I hit this button.
News team, assemble!
And really, fellas, this is a week where there should be plenty of focus on Brad Arthur because the Parramatta Eels coach moves past Brian Smith to become the longest tenured Parramatta coach in the history of the club. He's moving from 243 games in charge of the Eels to 243 games at the helm. Mate, what an amazing record, eh?
It's crazy to think where he came from to way back at the end of 2013 when it was him and Jason Taylor vying for the reins at the club. Then the salary cap scandal that broke across 2016, winning the spoon in 2018 when everything sort of just fell apart after such a wonderful campaign in 2017. And then since then, it's just gone from strength to strength all the way to the grand final berth in season 2022. And now, navigating a very, very tough season where injuries have just been rampant in the forward pack, and we're still getting results.
Yeah, Clint, what's your take on this 10 years with BA in charge?
It's absolutely incredible. I think back to when I sort of first became an Eels supporter, and that was in the mid to late 90s. And I've held a membership with the club for just over 25 years now. And certainly in those earlier years, and for probably the third, I guess, of my years supporting the Eels, Brian Smith was all that I knew. And so when we saw, I guess, the carousel of coaches that followed after his tenure, it probably did at some period or point in time along that journey didn't feel as though there'd ever be anyone that would take over Brian's record. But is there anyone more deserving than Brad Arthur? For all the highs and certainly all of the lows that have been experienced across the course of his tenure. We've seen the progressive rise of the side, and players throughout the course of his tenure personally pointing him out for changing their lives, making them not just better players but better men. And I don't think there's a higher compliment than that from your players as a coach. And it's a record that he well and truly deserves. And hopefully we can celebrate that record with a win.
Yeah, it's been the hallmark of his time at the club, the respect that the players have for him. And when you think there's very few coaches in the game who get up around that decade or longer with the one club, even like the great Wayne Bennett. Yes, he had that long stint at the Broncos. He's, of course, since moved on. You've got Craig Bellamy, who's had such a historied journey with the Melbourne Storm, and he's just going to be recognised for outstanding success that he's had at the club there. And Trent Robinson as well over at the Roosters now as a long-term coach there. But the coaching merry-go-round that happens at so many other clubs is, it's coaches just don't stay at clubs for a long time. And when you look at the Eels and realise that the top of the tree in terms of length of tenure now is Brad Arthur and Brian Smith, and you look at past coaches, and really I think John Money might have been the coach that had been there the longest outside of those two, certainly in the last 40, 50 years anyway. And it's just, coaches just don't stay long at clubs. I mean, the great Jack Gibson, 3 years at the club, 3 premierships. Obviously, he's got an outstanding winning percentage, and Terry Fernley was right up there in winning percentage, but he was only there for 4 years at the club. Once you're up there for such a long period of time, if you've got a winning percentage that's over 50%, you're doing pretty well. And I think BA overall sits at 53%. In the post that I put up today on TCT about his record, I wrote that he sits, I think it's around about, it's over 60% in the last 4 years. His winning percentage, I think it's a 61, 62%.
It's incredible.
If you scrub those rebuilding years from 2014 to 2016, his record look a lot better too.
Yeah. So, look, I mean, really, we do acknowledge that some of the outstanding work that he had to do to navigate through the challenging years that went all the way up to 2018 with the wooden spoon in 2018. And I doubt that there would have been any coach that would have hung around during the salary cap dramas and and not only that, I mean, you saw what the training facilities were not at Richie Benaud Oval. I don't know. I don't know how we ever attracted people to play at the club back then, because that was about as primitive as you'd get for having, a roster of, that's worth whatever the cap was back then, 8-9 million. It was just, I can't. As I said, I look back, I can't believe that we were based there, and that
You
they
could
had
drive
to
a car over that field, and you would pop a tire in a pothole. That's how dire the situation was there.
Yeah, I mean, you're not talking about any showers for the players. There's no meeting room. There's minimal shade. They had to train elsewhere for the gym, for team meetings, for any of their physio work that had to happen. It was just, it was one of, I think, about 4 or 5 places during any day that they could be as part of their training schedule. So, and really, when they went to sale yards, they're in demountables. And although it was a major step up from Richie Benaud Oval, it wasn't much better. And so to have only been at Kellyville now for about the last 3 years or so, it's, now we're starting to see, I guess, the fruits of BA's labours, plus also the facilities that the club's able to start to provide for the players and the coaching staff. So anyway, our congratulations to Brad Arthur. Our thank you to the club for having the faith in Brad and keeping consistent staffing there. And I can't mention Brad Arthur without mentioning a couple of other people. First of all, Steve Murphy. He's been BA's right-hand man since the 2014 season. Been alongside him all the way. He obviously, Brad and Murph obviously, they see themselves as I guess a double act, if you like. They're coaching. They're great coaching mates. They bounce off each other, completely different personalities. But once you've got a trust in someone, I guess just like the great Jack Gibson had his ally in Ron Massey and relied a lot on him. Well, Brad's got Murph there. And, of course, the other fella is Craig Sultana, who's been there. He's the football manager. He's been at the club now with Brad since 2016. So he's now in his 8th year with the club. So having that consistency of staff and the faith that the club have in those staff, I think has been important in Parramatta's success. Now, I guess people have been waiting for TCT to make a comment, but fellas, I think we're going to. I know the takes that we're going to have with this, or the takes that we're not going to have. But Dylan Brown, Clint, can I get you to say a few words first of all?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to go into the details of the charges that have been put against him, the fact he's been stood down, and anything else to do with the case. I'm just going to take this purely from a fan and I guess pseudo club perspective. It's disappointing, and probably I might even give a word of advice out to some of our young listeners out there. Look, there's going to be some lessons learned from all of this, but I hope for many people that part of the lessons that they learn from this is there's just not much to be gained in going out to a nightclub or a venue like the one that Dylan went to last weekend. And I might just leave it at that, because this is, the fact of the matter is this is an active case before the courts, and we've got to let a legal process take place. So I think I'll leave it just there, gents.
Yeah, John?
I'll take it just a fraction further than Quint, because I do respect his policy on, not saying something silly when it's an active process in court, and both sides need to have their day to press their cases. But in lieu of what he's being charged with, if he's guilty, I trust that the Eels in the NRL will come out with the requisite punishment, rehabilitative punishment, because what he has been levied with as a charge is nowhere near enough to warrant, terminating his contract. More than anything, it's about making him a better person for making that mistake if he is guilty. If he is innocent, like Clint said, there's still an important life lesson here for both him and any youngster, whether they're involved in rugby league or not, when it comes to going out and going to certain venues. Obviously, I imagine that Dill is immensely disappointed with himself insofar as letting the team down because of that immediate stand down, which looks like it's going to be a minimum of 3 games until his next court date at the very least. But in saying that, the team needs to support him, the club needs to support him, until his court case is seen out. And whether he's guilty or not guilty, they still need to support him, because it's going to be about making him either, helping lift him back up off his feet when he's, if he's found innocent. But if he's guilty, rehabilitating him with the right programs and the right, measures to make him a better person. So just got to wait and see now. And the Eels have to, fully embrace that next man up philosophy even more. That's been the case this year.
Yeah, and just to that, I want to add in, because both of you have raised the question whether he's guilty or not guilty. And I think this is important when it comes to fan reactions or critical reactions, wherever it's come from, is that there's a process for this action to go through, the charges, the legal process, and to weigh in with opinions about this. And I'm seeing plenty where he's already been judged as guilty, and I'm not suggesting he's guilty or he's not guilty, but if you're going to take a stance one way or the other, be very, very careful about that stance that you take, whether you're levelling accusations against Dill, whether you're levelling accusations against the person who is the alleged victim in this particular case. You can't. I'm very strong against like levelling. I don't know. Just some of the it's just there are some really, really strong opinions out there.
People are very quick to tar with the brush, aren't they, on social media, and everyone's a legal expert. Like Clint said, in reality, let both sides have their day in court and press their cases, because a lot can change between now and the next court case, and you don't want to be too quick to levy a very serious and an allegation that can change the perception of someone for the rest of their life. Even if they're found not guilty.
Multiple people.
Yeah, even if they're found not guilty or innocent, some people won't change their minds because they're so set on the narrative that's come out initially. So let's wait and see. If he's guilty, like I said, you trust the Eels in order to do the right thing, to take the right measures and rehabilitate him. If he's innocent, don't go out there saying stuff too hastily, because it's going to reflect poorly.
And, further to that, gents, I was just going to add, while we're touching on the fact that this is a legal matter, the fact is that there is a complainant and a defendant, and the defendant happens to be the Parramatta Eels player Daejarn Brown, and that's where it should be left, and let the legal process take place. And much to the points that 40's made before, whatever that outcome, we trust that the whatever measures need to be take place in the result of that outcome will be taken.
Yep, and I think we'll leave that there, and we'll now look at the football side of things, which is what happens in terms of what looks like a minimum 3 weeks without Daejarn Brown in the side. What do the Eels do? So, Clint, first off, mate, what do you see the Eels do? Because we don't have any inside word on this. I haven't gone to training this week. I've got no idea what plan B they have. So, what would you be doing, Clint?
Look, in my mind, I look at it as you want to have the least amount of disruptions to the defensive pattern of the team, or the defensive line of the team. And then, a big part of that defensive line is having Clint Gutherson at fullback directing it. And certainly when we're playing Canterbury this weekend and the likes of Matt Burton putting up his spiral bombs, there's no one better in the club to field those kicks than Clint. So there's been some speculation about moving him to 6 and potentially finding someone else to go to 1. But to me, you have to bring in Mustard. You have to bring in Daejarn Asi, and he just has to. All he has to do is just play his role, and allow. This is where the onus will fall on Moses Gutherson and Josh Hodgson's shoulders to be the leaders in the team and to direct the side around the field.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, plenty of configurations you could tinker with. Guffo into the halves, Russell the fullback, or Bowie Simonson the fullback, Cartwright into the halves, Brennan Hands into the halves, and then obviously finding replacements for them at both edge and on the interchange bench. But as you know, as listeners to the podcast and Sixties, we always talk about this. One of our sort of sports cliches is you don't weaken a strength for strength and a weakness, and the most simple replacement oftentimes is the best. It's a bit of Occam's razor in sports. Just bring in the guy that can play the role, even if he's not necessarily going to be a stud. But Daejarn's going to have great support players around him. He's going to come into one of the best spines in the NRL with Mitchell Moses in prime condition, Quinton Gutherson playing good football, and Josh Hodgson rounding into some good form before the bye. So you put him in there, you can streamline his role. You're going to support him on that left edge with Micah Sevo, Bowie Simonson, and I think it'll be Andrew Davey on that edge, given that we saw Bryce playing with Mitch last time on the right. And because he's on the left, because he is playing in that right to left passing lane, you can actually just use him as the fulcrum for the backline movements and use Quinton Gutherson as your primary playmaker down that side on that sweep
Absolutely.
or block. So you got options, and you can give him some looks where he can be the main guy and take some attacking chances after you've set up some other stuff. So he's going to, if he is the guy, I trust him to come in and do the job. The best part is that we're already a very kick-heavy team via Mitchell Moses. So he really has to worry about making his tackles, making his passes, and running when the opportunity presents itself. He's not going to be pressured with having to organise, having the long kick, and have all those extra responsibilities on the table. And I trust that if he is the guy, the Eels will, set him up to succeed.
Yeah, I'm I'm probably likely to agree with you that is the most logical way to go. And I like Clint's thought processes there too about this week's match when it comes to Burton and the kicking game of his that the Bulldogs absolutely rely on when it comes to their attack. It's like, take that out of their game. What else are they throwing at teams? I know that it's not the only way that they score, but even if it's not the winning play, it seems to be the play that gets them a bit of momentum back in a game when they're looking to stage some sort of fight back or to get a bit of momentum. It's that big kick of his with the spiralling bomb. We saw him levelling that sort of kick at Gutho in the first round when we played the Bulldogs. You can imagine what they would do if the Eels were putting someone other than Gutho at fullback. It would just be coming all night the fullback's way. It's not that it's not going to come that way this time, but the thing is, when you've got that spiral bomb, it's not easy to control. So he does tend to send it towards the centre of the field more than he does out to the wings. Not to say that it wouldn't head out to the wings, but we saw it mainly heading to the fullback in Gutho in the early rounds. So I'm on board that's probably the most logical. I think outside of that, BA might be tempted to play Brendan Hands in the halves and have Daejarn Asi on the bench. And when it comes to giving Hodgson a rest, because and again in that way you're only getting that one difference. A second change is basically that when it's time to rest Hodgson, that I would have Arcee then in the halves and Hands going to the dummy half position. That's not ideal, but I'm not ruling that out as a way that BA might go. So I guess we'll see what happens there. Of course, the other bad news this week is the injury to Wiremu Greig. And we obviously got word on this a little bit early on, but we waited for the Eels to come out with their official statement about the injury, because that's obviously the best way that for it to go, because that way you get all the proper confirmation about what's actually happened to him, the particulars on the injury, and any possible surgery or treatment. And the Eels have now come out. And John, do you want to just take us through the name of the injury and what we know about the process and the recovery period with that type of injury?
Yeah, I believe it's been identified as a Lisfranc fracture, which is one of the bones in the foot. And you don't see it too often in the NRL. I don't know mechanically why, but it's very uncommon in the NRL. But over in the NFL, where it's still uncommon, you do see it a lot more often, and it's oftentimes the big guys that do it. And obviously Wiremu definitely fits into that category. He is a big unit. And unfortunately, it's one of the worst things you can do to your foot. Essentially, it's like one of those key supporting bones that take a long time to heal. And as weird as foot injuries often are in terms of mechanically, they're not always big. Turf toe, Lisfranc injuries, they're some of the most brutal and impossible things to try and push through and play through. So it's no surprise that when NRL Physio was doing his rounds on social media, he said that the recovery time spans between 3 to 5 months. So it's a long time out. So optimistically, very optimistically, best case scenario, he might be back for the finals. Realistically, this could be a season ender for him, which is a damn shame given that he was having a hell of a breakout campaign for the Parramatta Eels.
That's quite a blow for the forward pack, Clint, given how Wiremu was advancing this year.
He was just, as Boys was just touching on there, he was just really, really starting to come into his own. I think over the last 4 to 6 weeks in particular, with Big Reg's absence, he's really started to make a name for himself as an NRL player. There's some performances there, the last probably 3 in particular, were incredibly impressive, and we know our good friend Mitch Clark is very much a fan of Big Wiremu, and
he moved to Wiremu Island. He moved.
He did indeed. I don't know if there's a correlation between his move date and Woody's injury, but I think there's something to look into there. But we'll park that for the moment. And I think to Forty's point about this not being very common in the NRL, the most recent known case of a Lisfranc injury with another NRL player was Reuben Cotter, who had a return time within 4 months or just under 4 months. So if that's anything to go by, I think we've seen the last of Woody this year, and it's a crying shame. But what we do hope to hear is, and we've speculated over the last few weeks as well, that he's in the process of renegotiating a new contract, and hopefully we can get that sorted and look forward to seeing Woody on the field again.
Yeah, if we are being realistic, it's not just that recovery time with rehabilitation. Woody's somebody that needs as much conditioning work as he possibly can do, and his success in first grade this year was a large part of just how fit he got himself in 2023. And we saw the difference every week with the longer the minutes that he played, the better his match fitness picked up, the better he was playing. And really, whenever he comes back, if he was to come back this year, he's not going to get too much time to build up that fitness. No. So I guess when it comes to team selections, it is, well, it seems like we're cursed in the forwards season. It's one injury after the other, and it's quite often that those players that are in the middle rotation. John, your team list Tuesday. What was your take on the main selections across the grades this week?
Yeah, we had some interesting picks across Flegg, Cup, and NRL, and there's obviously a bit of a TBA in the New South Wales Cup too if Daejarn Asi is caught up to the NRL, because currently he is listed as the starting 5'8" Finn Reggies, and I don't really know what they're going to do to fix that issue if he gets caught up. But in the Jersey Flegg 60s, we got a bit of a shake-up in the spine. We got Arpa Twiddle going from fullback to 5'8". He's a well-built young lad, so I've got no doubt he'll handle his duties in the front line defence pretty well. Strong run of the ball too. Be very interesting to see how he performs on Friday night. He makes way for Ethan Martin, who gets his second cap as an Eel at fullback. Backline's looking pretty healthy now. Komalafe, Williams, Blackburn, and Penasini, who we had a chat with last night. He's doing really well, young Richard. Looking forward to seeing more of him this year. In the front row, you got Nick Alraffo and Sam Tuivasa. Jock Brazel is named in Flegg 60s, but he's also named in the New South Wales Cup. So got to wait and see what his split of timeshare is there. And we got Patrick Spence making his Jersey Flegg debut. Paddy, one of the blog favourites, one of the site favourites. Been a great utility for the Eels in the SG ball. With, I believe, Matty Arthur copped a suspension this week, 60s, and Paddy's going to get his chance to be the utility off the interchange in the Jersey Flegg in his absence.
Well, I think he's going to get two weeks of that potentially, because Boodsy's out for a couple of weeks, I believe. So
the hip, don't call it a crackdown. Continues right down to the Jersey Flegg.
Yep.
And then moving on to the New South Wales Cup, Hayes Dunster's back. That's big news there. I think he missed the last couple of games. I'm not sure why in terms of injury or suspension. 60s, you might know better than me. But that helps reinforce you don't want to put the boot in, but it's a pretty miserable looking back line. Hayes is like the only real NRL caliber player out there. They're going to need to find a replacement for Daejarn, like I said, if he plays NRL. The big news, the rise of the hyphen 60s, Jonte Jr. and Bethan Meza. He gets another start in New South Wales Cup, and I think he's going from strength to strength in this grade.
Yeah, he is. And it's good to see, because we need these players that we're waiting for them to be the next wave. And it's Jersey Flegg's the step up from SG ball, but if you've got a young player and he's been playing Jersey Flegg, you want to see what they are like in an open age football competition. So,
and the other player who, after a little bit of a lull, which makes sense when you consider the attrition that can be senior football, that I think is starting to turn a corner, is Tony Mattiello. I think the last couple of weeks he's been pretty good off the interchange. So good to see Big Tony, who was also out there at the awards night last night, rounding back into some good form.
Yes. And of course the NRL, Big Reg.
Yes, well, that is the real fantastic news this week. After losing Dylan and Wiremu, you needed something, didn't you? and Reg comes back. And if you're playing Wes Wally on the team training gallery, you might have spotted him before the team was announced on Tuesday. He was sort of poking his head around a few pictures, not quite in frame. But yes, he's reunited with Junior Barlow on the front row this week. Absolutely massive, the Parramatta Eels, as they look to make it 3 on the trot against the Bulldogs. Andrew Davey returns from a concussion, from concussion, and after passing the protocols from a mandatory 11-day stand down, going back against, who did we play 2 weeks ago? Would have been
Cowboys.
No, Cowboys wasn't. He missed that
South.
game. It was South. That's right. He got concussed early in that game. So he's going to be what we believe working on the left edge, which is big. And then on the interchange, you got Ogden, Makatoa, Hands, and Dory. Ogden and Makatoa have been really good touch boys. They've been very, very, probably a low-key, underrated aspect of the Eels' sort of recent surge in the last couple of weeks. And Matt Dory, I think, can be a real impact player for the Eels off the interchange.
Yeah. Clint, how important is that return of Reg to the first grade team?
It couldn't be more timely, and it really does feel like we're cursed, in particularly in the forwards, gents. Every week there has been at least one of our quote unquote strongest forward pack unavailable. We have not put out our strongest team at all this year. And it's almost been as though at least 2 of the forwards that come into contention or consideration for that label have been unavailable. So getting Reg back is incredibly timely. We saw the damage he did in the game against the Bulldogs out at CommBank earlier this year as well. He certainly was one of the players that made the beef with Reed personal. It was great to see. He had a phenomenal game, scored a great try in that match as well. So his inclusion isn't just timely, it is welcomed.
Yep. And I want to go to you now, Clint, on a rumour that's floating around that the Eels are being linked with Charlie Staines. Your takes on that?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because it was shared as a subsection in the Telegraph earlier today online. And Charlie Staines is I would like to call him probably a handy player. From our perspective, he's certainly would be someone that'd be looked upon as a player of depth. And, I wouldn't consider him in our top 17 based on the squad that we have available at the moment. If the same reporters that are believed from the Telegraph and the likes of the other media outlets this year were looking for an X Factor player, I don't consider Charlie Staines to fit that category. But, fact of the matter is the August 1 deadline is looming and we've got to fill our quota. And if he were to come to the Eels, and we spoke about this before the show, gents, is we'd absolutely support him and cheer him on, but he's probably, in my own personal eyes, not the type of player I'm looking for. If we're targeting someone that can be either a pseudo fullback winger or winger centre, I'm very much like the prototype of player that can get over the advantage line a little bit more than what Charlie Staines does. He offers a lot of pace and is a solid finisher. Obviously had plenty of successful moments at the Panthers in his cameo appearances across his tenure there. But if he were to come, of course, I'll support him if he's in the blue and gold. But it's an interesting one, this.
Yeah, look, I think given that we've had a reserve grade team which has been naming second rowers in the centres and wingers from the Ron Massey Cup in the Parramatta Eels team for those New South Wales Cup games, we are probably short on outside backs. When it comes to Charlie Staines, I don't know that his pace is significantly more than what Sean Russell's is. So I wouldn't see that he would be ousting Sean as a winger at this stage. And Sean's a bigger build than Charlie. So I'd back I'd actually back Sean to have more meters coming out of the backfield. But I think not even Charlie himself would suggest that he would be recruited as an X factor by the Eels. So, John, have you got anything more you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, look, I wouldn't be the biggest fan of the signing. I'd be willing to do it on the provision that it was maybe rest of year plus maybe one more season, because theoretically, 12 months' time, Sean Russell's obviously another year into his NRL career. Hayes Dunster's getting back to full fitness. You've got a slew of young backs alongside the likes of Arthur Miller-Stephen, Richard Pennicini, Blaze Talangi, just to name it, just three off the top there. There's more of them as well that you want to hope are proliferating through into your New South Wales Cup team to give you that injection of youth and talent in reserve grade, then pushing into NRL consideration. So you don't want him to be blocking those paths too long. But in saying that, I just looked at our, when we did the team was review just then, and I was pretty critical of that backline. It's closer to a Ron Massey backline than a New South Wales Cup backline right now. So you can't be too picky at the same time. But like I said, I wouldn't want a long-term commitment.
Yeah, and actually, in you mentioning some of those players that will be a year older for the Eels, Arthur Miller-Stephen, he must be starting to get close to
He's got to be edging back to a return, because it was against Penrith, going back, that he did the injury the first time.
Well, I spoke to him at the Jersey Flegg game on the Easter weekend when we were at Lidcombe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he said he was going to be back in 9 weeks, roughly. So if we can work out how long it's been since Easter, that might give us a little bit of a rough timeline. So anyway, we press on. Next part, fellas, I just want to make a few words about Ray Hadley's time on radio this week, and that he's dedicated to an assault on the Parramatta Eels. I don't want to dive deeply into it. I just want to keep it factual. I'm not even necessarily going to be judgmental on his words. I think they speak for themselves. He basically, as soon as it was Monday morning and we had what had happened with Dylan Brown, the opportunity was then there for Ray to say quite a bit about the Parramatta Club. And he described the Parramatta Club as being a zoo, that it lacked discipline. He was basically going through a whole lot of reasons why the club wasn't professional, had poor leadership. He then started to get into name calling. He referred to Jim Sarentinos as Jim Alphabet. He referred to Sean McElduff, the banker, as could transfer to a wanker. There were inferences made around or about the treatment of female staff. It was a strange sort of comment that he made about female staff at the club who had spoken to him to raise issues with him. It was that was, as I said, it was inferences. Maybe I shouldn't say what he was inferring, but there was comments that he made about that. He's since gone on through the week to even ring up the Chris O'Keefe radio program last night after the training, with the comments that were made about the Eels making noises in the background, Eels players making noises in the background at the media calls. He's been attacking the head of comms at Parramatta, Josh Drayton. It's been quite relentless this week. I think the comments that he's made, where it becomes personal attacks and he's essentially sledging individuals, I think they speak for themselves. I don't want to give any more airtime really to what he's saying. I think when you have such a targeted attack, and and of course the other thing too was he spent quite a bit of time saying that he was waiting for Mr. Abdo to get back to him on the Dylan Brown matter and to make sure that Dylan Brown was stood down. So he was absolutely relentless in these matters. It was quite a lot for a radio program that is a news program between 9 and 12 on a daily basis to be dedicating to the Parramatta Eels rugby league team and to individuals that are connected with the running of the club. And I think I'll just leave it there.
Mm-hmm.
Are you happy if I move on now, fellas?
Yes, sir.
As I said, I really don't want to say anything more because I think the words that he said, I think they speak for themselves.
That's my dog saying the same thing.
Well, moving on to something that's a bit happier to talk about, and that's the Junior Rep Award nights there that were there at the stadium last night. So we were privileged to be invited to those awards, and it's always a good night. It's terrific to have a review of the season that we get via, we get the coaches' takes. We see all the players get honoured for their seasons. You see the joy that they all have in spending time together. They enjoy the successes that their teammates have. There's a lot of support for them when they're being called out for their awards. The players, the males, the females, they all get to dress up. It's like their Dally M night that they have. It's their Ken Thornett medal night, and it's given the sort of fanfare with being held in the Cumberland Lounge there at Combank Stadium, where a lot of similar functions are held during the year. And I think it's a great honour for the young ones there. Clint, your father, Jerry, had been a two-time winner of the Dennis Anderson medal prior to this year. I hate to break it to you, he didn't get it for a third year running.
I was ribbing him going into the night, gents, and my wife Maria and I were going 3 all throughout the week. So we might have jinxed him in that, but it's a wonderful night, the Junior Reps Awards night, and I know that regardless of not taking home the big gong this year, Dad still had a lot of fun. You revel in the success of the teams and the seasons that were, and we had a very successful junior rep season. The teams that were there last night were all finalists. Of course, the SG board were premiers. There was a lot to celebrate.
Oh, there was, and just to clarify as well, the esteem to which your father Jerry is held. As we said, he was coming into this year. He was the holder of the Dennis Anderson medal for basically the club person of the year in throughout the junior system, and that to win that 2 years in a row is quite spectacular. Because correct me if I'm wrong, I think he was the inaugural winner. Was he not? Was he the first winner of that medal?
I believe so, yes. So, I did suggest to him in jest throughout the week, and I knew Big D very, very, very well. So, I hope he doesn't mind me saying it. God rest his soul. But if he was to take it home a third time, they were going to have to rename it the Dennis Anderson Jerry G medal.
And it was a common theme among the coaches' speeches was that both Jerry and Joey Grimer were consistently thanked for their efforts outside their actual responsibilities at the club, the extra yards they put in for the different squads to help them get ready for each week. So it's
that's what I wanted to make. That's where I was heading to. Actually,
sorry to steal the thunder there, Sixties.
That's what I was saying. The esteem to which he's held is that for people that aren't aware, is that Jerry was this year the manager of the Harold Matthews Cup team. Last year he was the SG Ball manager, and then the Jersey Flegg manager straight after that. It was SG Ball first, wasn't it, Clint? It wasn't Was it Harold Matthews or SG Ball last year?
No, he was
I think it was
Harold Matz. He was Harold Matz with Flegg last year. I think it was the year
Ah,
prior that
okay.
he was with the Ball side, and you know, he's rotated throughout all of the grades there.
Yeah,
So
yeah. That's
um,
it's hard to keep. It's hard to keep up with which team he's managing, but he did double duty last year
yeah,
by sliding from the junior rep program to halfway through the season, taking over as the Jersey Flegg team manager as well. So look, it was no surprise that he did take out the gong 2 years in a row, because it was quite a job that he did last year. But it was a fantastic night. And what I'd like to do right now is just quickly go through the recipients of the awards from the different grades. So, John, you were there last night with me. I'd like to throw to you, if you wouldn't mind, to run through the recipients in the different grades.
Yeah, the night kicked off with the Harold Matthews. Coach Chris Howard gave a fantastic speech about their campaign and the standards that they set for themselves. 11 of the 25 squad members were playing in their junior year of eligibility, which means they're going to be back next year, which is a testament to how talented that squad was. But we start with the Coaches Award 60s, which was taken out by Lachlan Koinakis, who had a very good season as the sort of rotational dummy half and lock forward. Players player was Captain Josiah Funarayuta. Best back, Lorenzo Tawataina. Best forward, Tyson Sangalang. And doubling up on the awards, and deservedly so, best and fairest going to the big man himself, Josiah Funarayuta, who was outstanding on that right edge.
Yes, it was hard to argue with any of those award winners. I'd like to think that you and I, as we were trying to predict the award winners, I think we came pretty close in our pre-announcement tips. Now the Gale.
Yeah, moving on to Tasha Gale, Coach Ryan Walker getting his team to back-to-back finals now. Obviously, the program going from strength to strength, and we're expecting big things for them with the Lisa Fiola 60s that you covered, their squad coming into the mix next year. But for this season, the Coaches Award went to Caitlin Pearden. Players player, no surprise, outstanding outside back Lindsay Tui. Best back, Debbie Dewey at fullback and also at times halfback. She had a great season. Best forward, co-captain Ashley Pottinger alongside Debbie there. And then the best and fairest, again, no surprises, Lindsay Tui. She doubles up just the same way that Josiah did. And also the other announcement there, 60s, was when they were all done for Tasha Gale, they had two players stand up, Talara Bamblett and Lindsay Tui, who were both announced as members of the NRLW development squad for season 2023.
Yeah, that's fantastic. They had a couple of the girls who were announced as development squad members last year that went from Tasha Gale into the NRLW squad and had that experience of training alongside the senior women in the team. And it was a fitting reward for strong seasons for those girls, strong couple of seasons, really, especially for Talara. She was a key member of the team last year that enjoyed such success. So, and of course, it was followed on by the premiership winning team.
Yeah, this was probably the highlight of the night, obviously, and coming in, there was a lot of noise given. Adam Hawes had a great intro speech about the success enjoyed by the SG Ball squad and a record-setting, was it 14 SG Ball Premiership 60s? So tremendous job done there by the lads. And Steve O'Day, the coach, who was a wonderful individual, gave a really impassioned speech about the camaraderie and the brotherhood of that squad and reaching the goals they set in that season. But on to the actual award recipients themselves. Coaches Award went to Buds, young Matty Arthur. He was outstanding. Players player, well, he's probably the biggest in terms of headlines now. I think will be Ethan Sanders. I think he's actually in the papers tonight, boys, with Penrith and Canberra chasing him. But best back, one of our breakout players coming from outside the district, Arpa Tweeder, was outstanding at fullback. No surprises there. Saxon Pryke taking out the best forward award. And then again, a double up of awards there. Ethan Sanders, best and fairest. And really, really good night for the boys. Had a fantastic campaign. And yeah, no surprises on those award winners, boys. But when we were doing this 160, I got to say, it felt like they were easily tool-free. You could have picked any of those spots there. That would have been deserved pickups of each of those individual gongs.
Yeah, we certainly said, well, there were a number of players who were in contention, strong contention for different awards. So,
and the final, I suppose, representative honours on the night. And I didn't get the extended bench because it was a bigger than a rugby union bench, but the Eels have internal metrics that they keep across the 3 grades for essentially involvement in performance in a given week, and they do a combined team of the year at the end of it across the Tarsha Gale, Harold Matthews, and Jersey Flegg, SG Ball, sorry. And team of the year, at least the starting team of the year, looked like this. At fullback, Arpa Tweedle, young Dom Ferrugia on one wing, Muhammad Alamadine on the other, Lindsay Tui and Lockie Vella in the centres. Poor Lockie Vella, we saw him 60s. He's got a brace on the knee, and I think he's going to be out for a little bit, which is a real shame. He was one of those junior eligible members of the Harold Matthews squad.
And we should also mention that's Michael Vella's son.
Yes, great Mick Vella, who we had a chance to say hello to last night. Wonderful, wonderful man. But in the halves, you had Ethan Sanders and Lorenzo Talatona. Front row, Sam Tuavati, Matt Arthur and Saxon Pryke, Dom Destratus, Josiah Funariuta in the edges, and Charlie Geimer, who was the talismanic captain of the SG Ball team, locking the forward pack. So an outstanding team on paper there, and you can see the SG Ball dominating there for good reason.
Yeah, the extended bench in that team of the year was Lance Fulima, Micaiah Darcy, Tyson Sangalang, Talara Bamblett, Devonte Vivella, Debbie Dway, Lockie Kanikis, and Ashley Pottinger. So congratulations to all of those people for being acknowledged for their contributions during the season.
And it's got to be said before we get on to the Dennis Anderson Medal recipient of the year that they also gave out honours for City Country and other representative selections. And I got to say, the 2 team trainers, I think it was Tarsha Gale and SG Ball, got the biggest cheers of the night when they got announced. So you love seeing that sort of camaraderie and brother and sisterhood in those teams. So really good to see. But yeah, the big, in terms of non-player gongs, the Dennis Anderson medal, who we mentioned Jerry's won a couple of times, went to Wayne Howe, who got the biggest cheer of the night, I think, when he went up there. That was a great moment.
What about the reaction from the players when he got that?
yeah, and I think it really comes back to, and you're probably going to touch in the 60s, but the night closed off with a brilliant speech by Joey Grimer, who we'd spoken to on the tip sheet just before, the day before we actually recorded on the Tuesday. And he gave a beautiful speech about what makes Parramatta so special for him and for everyone there. And he mentioned it was the good people involved. And you see that reaction. You see how everyone celebrated Wayne getting his dues there. And you can understand exactly what Joey meant in that moment.
Yeah, so many people. And I mean, we've got Clint here with us. And we were talking before about Clint's father, Jerry. And we've got to know Jerry quite well over the years with our coverage of the junior reps. And, you know, people like Jerry, people like Wayne, people like, you know, I mean, we're talking about people who volunteer their time and go above and beyond. And they're Parramatta people. They're Parramatta people to the core who it's all about what they can do for others. And like football clubs all over the place are built on people like that. You wouldn't have junior clubs, you wouldn't have Pathways football if you didn't have volunteers and people who were unselfish, people who are just genuine community people. And you can, when you see the reaction from players like that, like we saw when Jerry won it in the previous 2 years, like we saw when Wayne won it this year, is, you know, they know how much goes into the work that's involved in the roles that they have within the club. So, Clint, I'm sure you let your father know how much he's appreciated all the time, but please, you know, pass on from us, because we actually didn't get a chance to talk with Jerry last night. We were, I don't think we were near where he was located. If we were, we just didn't bump into him during the night. It was certainly a big event last night. Lots of people there, but yeah, please pass on from us just how much we appreciate his involvement with the club, and we do again mention that his name came up in the speeches from the other coaches, not just the Harold Matthews coach. So yeah, please do that for us.
No, thanks for that, Sixties and 40. Look, yeah, sport is, as you said, is found on, its roots are in volunteers and volunteerism, and I'm someone who's spent the majority of my career to date working in sport as well. There's certainly times throughout the period of my career that I've been both a volunteer and relied on volunteers, and I don't think there's any other industry in the world, and probably not in any other country in the world, that you'll find the spirit and the heart and the effort and blood, sweat, and tears that goes in from volunteers that really enables the opportunity for professional sporting outfits to have the extent of operations that they do now. So, we've touched on some other people there in the club as well who are equally, if not more important as well. Everyone plays a role, and it's a very interdependent operation. And without people doing those things, it doesn't have the chance to not only succeed but live. And the players that we're talking about here today as junior rep players, and as we've done over the years, they're tomorrow's first graders and tomorrow's household names. So it's exciting, but these things don't happen without these types of people. So thank you for your sentiments. I'll pass that on. But yeah, well done to everyone involved in the program this year.
Yeah, and just finally on last night, I just want to add to John's comments about Joey's speech. It was a very moving speech. Anyone listening would be left in no doubts about how Joey feels about the Parramatta Eels. Can I also mention too that his speech, he had no notes. He just stood there and spoke from the heart for about 10 minutes about Parramatta and what the club means to him and the people that have been within the club. And I guess after 31 years, it's something it's not going to be removed from his heart. And I'm very proud of the fact that Joey is a friend of ours.
Mm-hmm.
I'm honoured with by the fact that he took the time out to message us on his last couple of days just to thank us for our input in his time at the club and how he feels. And mate, it's something that really any thanks should be well and truly going the other way. So thank you, Joey. And if you're listening to this, as I know you love to listen to the podcast, our thanks again for who you are, basically.
I think it says everything about him that it took the opportunity to make NRL history to pull him away from the Eels. So, to do something incredible up in PNG, and, that is who Joey is. So, yeah, he's certainly not going to stop being a friend of TCT and of everyone here. He is an incredible man, and we really look forward to helping document his story, actually, as he does his good work up there.
Well, when you make your trip to Papua New Guinea, John, to report on how Joey's going up there.
Someone's got to keep him in check. You know what? He's a good guy, but you let him run right, and someone's got to pull him back into line.
Well, look, when we make the trip up there, I'll tell you what, I'll make sure that everything's okay in the hotel for Joey. I'll ensure that all the services are up to date. But what I think is really important for you, John, is for you to get out to some of the villages and check on how his work is progressing.
Yep. I'll be boots on the ground is definitely my responsibility.
That's it.
I just wanted to tack onto the love fest here, and rightly so, for Joey. I've met and been involved with Joey across many different times and facets and many different capacities throughout my life. As a kid, when I was playing football, as an administrator, working in rugby league, and as my dad's son, and Dad obviously being part of the junior reps program, working very closely with Joey over the last few years. And I honestly don't have high enough praise to give that man and what he has done for the programs there and for our club. He's very much at the nucleus and the epicenter of the junior success and the first graders of tomorrow for many years now. And anyone that spends some time around Joey, he's very much an innovator of skill development. You do a coaching session with Joey, and you'll if you're not familiar to some of his tactics, they'll look a little bit peculiar on the surface, but he'll break it down and breaks it down for you. You see the real life and real game application of those skills, even if they don't necessarily make sense straight away. And it really is a scholar of the game. I know every time that I speak with Joey, and I'm sure it's the same for you, gents, as well. I'm always learning something new about the game and considering things from a different perspective. And as you put so eloquently, Sixties, it took a life-changing and game-changing opportunity to develop rugby league over in Papua New Guinea to prime away from us. And I wish him the absolute best in his next adventure. And I'll be watching as eagerly as anyone is.
Oh, just a couple of little funny observations too. I think one of the things that Joey should be congratulated for is that he still manages to get from point A to point B at any rugby league venue, despite the number of people that stop him to say hello. That's if anyone has ever spent time at a rugby league venue with Joey, especially when he's trying to walk from point A.
It's like a papal procession. The poor man just gets.
Yep. Yeah, shaking hands and kissing babies. Shaking hands and kissing babies.
What he probably needed he got a wonderful parting gift from the Eels. If he had had like a special ring made that he could have just held out the hand as he walked through. Yes, because as I said, the number. But in all honesty, that was genuinely what it was like. He had so many people in the game from all the clubs, and it was from players through to the coaches, administrators, whatever the case may be, parents. Everyone knew him. Everyone loved him. Loves him. I shouldn't. It sounds like the past tense sounds wrong. Everyone knows him. Everyone loves him. And so there's that. And you mentioned about the skills. I was, I won't say victim to him showing me one of the tricks that he had for that he employed with the NRL squad, was that ball grip with the so he'd get the tins of baby formula, empty them, fill them up with sand, get the tape around them for the grip, and then you grip the baby formula with one hand, and then you're sort of doing the lateral arm raises with them, and it's to strengthen their hand grip. And that was no problem with the right arm. The left arm was not too good. And a couple of days later, I was thinking, why am I getting like this burning sensation in my shoulders and neck? And then I realised what I'd done a couple of days beforehand in trying to lift these damn tins of baby formula. I mean, for NRL players that are in the gym, I'm sure that there wasn't the issue with the weight of them and that lifting action, but trying to get the hand gripping it and just holding it basically by the fingertips, you can see then why it helps that strength with gripping a football. Like if you can hold on to these heavy tins, the way you
dodge a
can
wrench,
grip
you can dodge a
football
ball
with one hand. So yeah. Anyway, we now press on because we have been spending some time rambling about Parramatta news, but we do have to get to NRL news. So firstly, we've got injuries to Origin players and speculation about who's coming in. Of course, the main one as far as New South Wales is concerned is Nathan Cleary. Fellas, the potential implications for Parramatta with maybe Mitch Moses in contention for a spot. What's your thoughts, John?
I was I had my whole thing prepared for this about, talking about the pros and cons, and obviously the huge issue now that if Moses is out and you've got Asi and then a huge gap next to him, what do we do? But there is a developing story right now that completely changes the complexion of this conversation, I think. Api Coruscant has a suspected broken jaw. Teno Fa'asuamaleaui got him with a forearm. And suddenly, Freddie loves his combinations. And if he's got to go to Damien Cook, you think immediately Adam Reynolds, Cody Walker. And I think that while the fact that Phil Gould was championing Moses was an indication that perhaps he might have a serious consideration for the job, given that I think Freddie, legitimately respects Phil Gould's opinions. I think this injury to Api might just completely change the equation. I think he just goes for this. Well, it's not really the South Sydney combination, but the former South Sydney and current South Sydney combinations the same way that Api wasn't a current Penrith combination.
Yeah, Clint.
Yeah, look, John's beaten me to the scoop because I've had 3 different people text me throughout the podcast recording here with that news about Api, and I was going to suggest something not too dissimilar to that because prior to that in my head I was certain that Moses was going to get picked, but this absolutely throws the cat amongst the pigeons now and certainly opens up the opportunity for that inverted commas South connection to be picked. But I had been dreading prior to this the notion of Mitch being selected and that compounding some of the effects to our season. And it would be just our luck that he would get picked, that New South Wales would lose, that he'd be made the pariah and blamed for that loss and carrying that weight of expectation back into our season. And then not that you want to be a Debbie Downer on all of this, but in his one Origin game to date, he walked away with an injury and we lost him for a few weeks. It would be just our luck this year that he'd pick up something in that game as well. So look, I said last week, or a couple of weeks ago, I always wish the best for our players, but I'm the Parramatta man first, and I'm selfish, and I want our players playing in our jersey as much as possible, and I'm hoping that I'll call him elusive and dynamic Brad Freddie Fittler is erring towards the old South Sydney connection and away from the Parramatta talisman.
If we entertain the hypothetical right now, the worst case scenario for Parramatta where Mitch does get picked, he gets ruled out for the game against Manly, right? He goes into camp this coming week because the Origin will be the week after, I believe, if I've got my dates right. So in a almost cosmic sense of black humour, the Eels play the Manly Sea Eagles, where Jake Arthur would be the presumptive replacement for Mitchell Moses. You come into this game, you've got no long-term 5'8", no long-term halfback available. Daejarn Asi is presumably your 5'8" option. What do we do at halfback? Like, do you throw Gufferson in there and jerry-rig some sort of game plan that involves the forwards and Guffo sort of backing up? Do you turn to Jordan Rankin outside the top 30? I don't know. Is it crazy enough that someone like Ethan Sanders gets a look in all the way down from Jersey Flegg and coming back from a broken hand? Sixties, I legitimately don't know what you do in that scenario.
You have to have someone in there with a kicking game. That becomes the bottom line. You can't manufacture 2 halves who can't kick. And I don't know as well that Clint Gutherson has enough of a long kicking game.
No, I don't think any of those options do. Brendan Hands, I'm not even sure he does as well.
That's what I'm saying. So I legitimately don't know because you wouldn't throw someone like Ethan Sanders to the Wolves where his first game back is an NRL debut, and like he's had his hand injury. It just wouldn't happen. But he legitimately would have the best kicking game in the club out of those that are left. So look, in all honesty, I think it would be at the point where BA would be considering Jordan Rankin. Yeah. Just simply to have some level of game management. You you just couldn't have no game management, and that's what it would boil down to. I'm sure that given that he's come through the grades as in the halves, that Brendan Hands would have some sort of kicking game, but I haven't seen enough of it to make an assessment on it. He certainly hasn't been playing any position in this season that's required him to do much in the way of kicking. So, mate,
it's a problem you don't want to have to try and find the answer to, but good Lord, yeah.
Oh, mate, I don't even want to think about it. And but just on Mitch Moses, the bloke, I believe, deserves another run in Origin.
On that, I agree.
But like Clint, I'm Parramatta selfish.
Selfishly, yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
but yeah, the fact.
I mean, we want players to be Parramatta aspirational, and us as supporters to be Parramatta selfish. And
like I said before, the Coruscant news broke, I had the whole sort of tirade set up because how disrespectful is it towards Mitchell Moses, who has been a top 2, top 3 halfback for damn near 4 or 5 years now in the NRL, that the opportunity comes, Cleary gets injured, and he's not even like in the top 3 candidates listed in the media, except for Phil Gould, who I'll give him his dues. He's always been a strong proponent of Mitchell Moses, it must be said. He's always really appreciated Moses' talents. But, Adam Reynolds, Nico Hines, Cody Walker, they're all been strongly listed before Mitchell Moses. And it just feels flat out disrespectful to him. And it's not even about him getting picked. It's the fact that he's not been given serious consideration. Yeah, like, hello? Like,
yeah, it was almost like last year how Reg fell out of the conversation simply because the journalists, the media, knew that Freddie put a line through him.
Yep.
So he fell out of even selection discussion in the media because they knew he wasn't going to be. He wasn't in Freddie's mind. So, now on Queensland, they've got some injuries there in the forwards.
And Tino might be up for a charge now. So
yeah. Are we looking at potentially losing Jermaine Hopgood as well?
Well, I mean, Quinn will have some good opinions on this too, but in terms of seniority, you've got the likes of Christian Welch.
Yes.
You got Felice Kafusi, who can come back in if they want that enforcer there, who, he really thrives in that sort of environment. But the other player that immediately comes to mind is Corey Horsburgh, who is enjoying a fantastic season at Canberra. He gives you probably a little bit more engine room sort of feel when you come in there. He's going to run the ball and be really good there. I think Jermaine could be a sneaky option here, and it does scare me because you need all hands on deck here. But I think there's Billy's been he hasn't come out over the top of his support of Hopgood. He hasn't with any player, but he's been quite positive when engaged about Hopgood in the media, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's either in the team or maybe brought in the camp.
Yeah, I don't think we could afford it, could we, Clint?
Well, I mean, if the injury, the latest injury casualty board is to go off anything, we're supposedly getting Matto back next week. So, if he were to return, that could potentially offset any potential selection of Jermaine. But
there's a lot of offsetting happening this year, isn't it? It's never just getting healthy. It's always
that's what we said earlier.
So someone comes in, someone goes out. Yep.
Yeah, it's a rotation and a perpetual game of musical chairs. But
and by the way, maybe if you really want to talk left field, that Matto solves a halves problem if we were to lose
Matto or Cardi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So sorry about that, Clint.
No, that's fine. They're good points. There's certainly creative capabilities in both Matto and Cardi. So they're definitely, I guess, in consideration in that hypothetical. But Corey Horsburgh is certainly the flavour of the month at the moment, and plenty of that's his own doing. But he's getting a lot of media support from the usual suspects, and I'll just leave a dangling carrot for people to infer as to why that might be the case. But he's warranted those discussions as well through his form. So he's definitely having a case pushed for him. And to what Forty said, Billy's been very positive when engaged about Jermaine. So I know whatever path Queensland do go with their selections, it'll be with the view to win the game. And they've got a really good brains trust there. That's and if Jermaine's considered as a part of that equation, then he's in good rugby league company with some of the great modern game minds there.
Yeah. Yep. Now we just want to wrap up here with talking about concussion protocols. We've seen Manly get the all clear from Tommy Turbo to play after his concussion in Origin. But we've also got the Dogs naming Reed Marnie and going through the process of trying to say that his ruled Category 1 concussion he has recovered from, that he's recovered from it within the 11 days so that he is given permission to play within that 11 days against the Parramatta Eels on Easter Monday. Fellas, are we now getting into ludicrous territory where the mandatory 11 days suddenly is not applicable?
Yeah.
I mean, does it open up a Pandora's box?
I got some strong words about this one that I probably can't say on the podcast. I thought that the whole initiative behind the mandatory 11-day stand down was that it was essentially hallowed ground, right? You're not meant to infringe on it. Not only is it a player welfare thing, plausible deniability is the wrong way of putting it, but it's like a workplace compliance thing for the league as well, right? They're an OH&S safety thing for players that in the long term, a mandatory week and a half down from these, almost like a no-fault stand down, right? These things just need to happen. And the fact that we've seen it not once but twice be contested in the span of a week and a half is very concerning.
Yes.
Not a fan at all. And again, I will point to the Parramatta Eels doing their due diligence and their responsibility to their players consistently, despite there being some snarky comments from certain media personalities in the past about us abusing the interchange system with it. When it comes to our gun players getting head knocks, whether it's Mitchell Moses, Quentin Gufferson, any of them, if they show concussion symptoms, we take them off and they do not pass their tests. And we give them the requisite time to recover. And I will always support the Eels and Brad Arthur doing the right thing by players when it comes to mental and head health. And not a fan of the trend we're seeing in the last week and a half. Not a fan at all.
Yeah, and you just know, as I said, I think it's a potential Pandora's box because all of the evils that will come out that where due care isn't taken with concussion. Now, I know that the Canterbury are saying they're going through a range of independent specialists and experts and getting their assessment of him. But seriously, if this happens, you can guarantee. I mean, I was always concerned that when you got to a grand final, if you'd had someone that suffered a concussion in the preliminary finals, and you only had that week until the grand final, that players wouldn't want to stand down from a head knock the week before. And this literally opens the door that if they can find experts that will give, and I'm not going to suggest experts would do anything that they shouldn't do, but who knows how many tests they go to, how many specialists they go to get the okay, the clearing, because we've had doctors categorised it as Category 1, a Category 1 concussion. So once that's been diagnosed, isn't that the end of the story? It's mandatory.
Well, it shouldn't be up for debate based on the NRL policy and outlined and established this year.
The idea of shopping for a doctor that will give you the Cat 2 diagnosis is concerning.
Yeah. And you know what? If you're a doctor and again, I don't want to I want to be careful about how I say this. And I guess it comes down to second opinion. Like doctors are sought for second opinions. But, and let me be very clear on this, the medical profession has been strong in their stance about the role of concussion in problems that elite sports people, especially those that are involved in contact sports, the impact that it can have later in life. Now, you get a club taking a player to a specialist when the game itself has protocols that say there is a mandatory 11-day stand down for anyone that suffers category 1. And then a club and an individual comes to the doctor and they're seeking a clearance to go within to beat a mandatory stand down rule that's established in a sport over concussion. Am I wrong in thinking I don't understand that there would be medical people that would be prepared to do that? Like it seems to fly in the face. Like if they know what the intent is of the sports person coming to them, like they're coming to them to beat a medically defined stand down, why would they provide them with the tools to do that? And if something was to happen in the future, let's say in this instance, Reed Marnie gets injured in the game, another concussion, would he have the capacity in the future? Like if he ended up having problems, if he pointed out and said, look, I should have been stood down. This doctor gave me the clearance to play the next week and I got a concussion the next week and I'm not able to play now. Would he have legal recourse with that doctor who gave him the clearance?
It's a very, very, this is a minefield for a whole ton of reasons. And the answer to the question you posed earlier is probably not one we should comment on.
Yep. Agreed.
The reality is that, like we always say, it's a results-driven business. And, coaches and football executives and everyone, they all feel the pressure. And when you haven't got your best roster available, particularly when it's, star players, you tend to push lines, I feel like.
Well, let me repose that question. Strike that I've asked that question. Should clubs be putting doctors in that position?
No, absolutely not. Yeah. If the NRL is going to appoint an independent authority, medical authority, to grade this stuff at the game, then that should be treated as such.
So I now want to take it one step further. If we agree that clubs shouldn't be putting doctors in that position, as the governing body, should the NRL be allowing clubs to put doctors in that position?
Again, no. But I feel like they're going to let it happen until something bad happens. At least that's the precedent that's been set these last couple of instances. So, yeah, not a fan. And like I said, I will constantly give props to the Eels for doing the right thing when it comes to head knocks. It is like one of the almost sacred things in this game. I think that every club should be doing real serious or taking care of it real seriously.
Yeah. I really have concerns over the precedents that are being set here and the fact that doctors are being put into this position, because I feel like doctors certainly wouldn't go out of their way to prove that someone doesn't have concussion or didn't have concussion or has no side effects, continuing impacts from concussion for the purposes of getting them to break a protocol not break a protocol, but to be exempt from a protocol as an individual case. And I just don't think they should be, I don't think the medical profession should be put into that position. I don't think they should be the basis for having exemptions or special cases, and that once we've done that, it's just, you may as well throw that mandatory time out the window and just say
it's all up for grabs at that point.
Yeah,
it's all up for grabs.
Like, why have a mandatory 11-day stand down, right? Why not just have, okay, if you can prove that you have no impact from the concussion, then you can play. That may as well be the rule. Now, I'm not saying that should be the rule, but that's literally what it would be in this instance, isn't it? Like, if someone is able to play inside the 11 days because they've got the okay from doctors, then it should be that's the rule for everyone. If you get a clearance from doctors, from independent doctors, you can play. And you know what? If Reed Marnie's allowed to play, then coming into grand finals, if anyone goes and does the same thing and then isn't allowed to play, you would think there would be legal recourse.
Yeah, well, that's not the legal recourse I'll be worrying about. It'd be the legal recourse 5 years down the road when there's more concussion data coming out and the NRL allowing these players to play. So
yes. and that's why this is a minefield, because there's so many unintended consequences of decisions that are and aren't made around this particular matter. And this is where I'd like to see a little bit of strength from the NRL to reinforce their policy and stand their ground and say, we acknowledge that you've done that in the best interests of our product. Our specialist doctor identifies this. We will be upholding our stance in the policy in this occasion.
Well, fellas, I reckon we've covered about as much as we possibly can in one jam-packed podcast. Is there anything we've missed?
Probably, but we'll have to wear that one on the chin.
It's certainly been a week.
Did we achieve the goals? We're inside the 2 hours?
We're inside an hour and a half as it stands, 1:27:20 so far.
Mate, I think we've done exceptionally well. So at this point, let's give a thank you once again to our sponsors, star partners Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, and also Big Swing Golf at Northmead. Again, we wouldn't be able to do the podcast. We wouldn't be able to do what we do on TCT without having sponsors that help us bring the content to you, our fellow Parramatta Eels supporters. Thank you, John. Thank you, Clint. Thank you to everyone for tuning into this. Let's get going on Monday. Let's bring home the win against the Bulldogs and go you mighty Eels.